And now let's bring in the number 2 Democrat in the House of Representatives, Maryland Congressman Steny Hoyer. Congressman, it's always great to see you. Thank you so much for taking some time to be with us today. I want to start with this commission, and I want to get to as well. There's been some drama on the House floor. We'll talk about that in a second. But you told my colleague Leanne Caldwell, who we were just speaking with yesterday, that Democrats have a lot of options on the table if this doesn't ultimately come through. What is your best next option if there is no bipartisan commission?
Well, first, let me say our first and best option was a bipartisan commission, which mirrored the 9/11 commission. And that's what we offered on the floor. That's what passed the floor. 35 Republicans believed that that was, in fact, as Mr. Katko pointed out, an exact replica of what we did in 9/11, had overwhelming support in the Congress. Sadly, that didn't happen. But yes, we have other options. Obviously, we have committees. Committees have subpoena power. We have committees of jurisdiction. The Homeland Security Committee clearly has jurisdiction. The Government Oversight and Reform Committee has jurisdiction. The Appropriations Committee. So there are a lot of different avenues. We could establish a select committee in the House, similar to the Republicans that formed, had 8 different investigations at Benghazi, where 4 people tragically lost their lives. But they had 8 different studies of that, or hearings, or oversight, all 8 of which reached the same conclusion. There was no there. So we have options, and I don't think we're going to be dissuaded from finding the truth simply because, for whatever reasons, Donald Trump has told McConnell and McCarthy that he doesn't want this commission, and therefore they came out against it.
So let me dig into that select committee situation for a second, because Democrats at the time, including you, criticized the select committee on Benghazi, although you did ultimately decide to participate in it. But you yourself said in 2016 that the report that they issued showed definitively this has been a blatantly partisan exercise. Shame on them for wasting taxpayer money and 2 years of time on this partisan investigation. Could you impanel a select committee and avoid this very criticism? Democrats would run the staff. They'd be in charge of setting the agenda. It's much different than a 9/11 style commission.
Well, that's why I said, Casey, that is our preference. That's what we offered. That's what we've sent to the Senate. And hopefully the Senate will adopt that. That's the proper way to move forward. But because the Republicans want to stonewall finding out the truth about what happened on January 6th, why it happened, not only who participated. McCarthy's right, law enforcement is looking at that, but the underlying reasons, the underlying actions of the President of the United States, the underlying actions of members of Congress, for that matter. That ought to be done in a bipartisan fashion. That's what the commission does. It's equal numbers. Both sides would choose the staffs in consultation with one another. So I think John Thune, the Republican senator, had it right. They want to put this behind them. They don't want to talk about it. They want to look to the issues, as he's pointed out, for the next election. In other words, this is about politics for them. For us, and I think I say this, honestly and sincerely, this is about our democracy. This is about an insurrection that was instigated and undertaken to stop the counting of votes for President of the United States in America. It was a profound event. And we need a commission composed of equal numbers, as we've done, as McCarthy asked for, with equal authority about subpoenas, that there have to be agreement on subpoenas. That's what McCarthy asked for. The only thing that McCarthy didn't get, and McConnell, I don't know what McConnell wanted or didn't want, was to look at a lot of other things to distract and dissemble and to diminish the focus on this insurrection that occurred, stopping the counting of votes for President of the United States. So I think frankly, it's a cover-up. It's fear of what the truth might be. It's a hear no evil, see no evil approach to January 6th, which was a profound, tragic event. in American history, a unique event in American history. And we need to look at all the facets of it so that we do not allow it to happen again.
Yeah, the worst attack on the Capitol since the War of 1812. So you're talking about this commission in the past sense, in the past tense. What is... So sorry, sir. I think we may be having some trouble hearing you. I'm going to press ahead with my next question, which is, okay, yeah, I think so. Yes, sir. We still haven't figured this out after a very long time of this pandemic. You're talking about the commission in the past tense. Does that mean you think that there's no chance that there may still be some negotiation that could bring 10 Republicans on board, that behind the scenes, the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi might not talk to Mitch McConnell, or that there may be someone like Susan Collins, enough people to actually get this over the finish line? You think there's no shot in the Senate?
I hope there is a shot, and I didn't want to talk about it in the past tense. That's what we've sent over to, and as I said, that's our preferred option, which is why we offered it, and that's why we passed it. And in my view, that's why 35 Republicans, with courage, because Trump doesn't want this, and he tells his people to be angry and to not support those people who don't do what he says. It's not a question of his proposals or agreeing with him. It's if he says don't do it, he expects people not to do it. But no, I don't want to put it in the past tense. This is our preferred option. I think Schumer, Durbin, and I'm sure I will, as well as the Speaker, urge 10 senators from the Republican side or more to allow a commission to get to the truth. That's what we want, the truth. And the truth, I think, is what the commission, the 9/11 Commission, sought. Their recommendations were very, very helpful. I think the same could be true of the January 6th commission, if, in fact, the Senate passes, and I hope they will.
So, Senator, let me turn to, this is related, the bill that was just on the floor of the House of Representatives, the security supplemental funding bill to try and build additional security around the Capitol in the wake of this event. You had several, at least one progressive vote no, several just vote present. It clearly was a bit of a scramble on the floor. What happened there? Why do you have this issue with progressives? And do you think that you can pull this off now?
Well, progressives, you say we have the problem. Carmela Jayapal, Mr. Pocan, who were the co-chairs, now the chair of the progressives, almost all the progressives voted for it, so I don't think we have a problem with progressives. And I think that there were a few of our members who wanted to make a point that they thought was important, but they didn't want to defeat the bill. And so it passed. That's what happened today. We passed a bill, but it's amazing.
Sure.
In 9/11, I was here in 9/11. The Congress came together not as Republicans and Democrats, but as Americans, to defend democracy, to uphold our Constitution, and to ensure our security. Today, inexplicably, not a single Republican, given what happened on January 6th, given the assault on the Capitol and the putting members out of the Congress, stopping the business of the Congress. Now, we came back and we finished our business, which was a testament to the strength of our democracy. But having said that, not a Republican voted to make sure that that didn't happen again, that the Capitol had the resources to be secure and not allow insurrectionist mob to threaten members, staff, press, all the people who work here, and with the intent of stopping the steal. Now, what they meant by that was stopping the counting of the Electoral College votes. Not a single Republican, as if to say, oh, that really didn't happen. Those were just nice tourists, as some Republican observed. These were not nice tourists. These were people who violently undermine the House operations and the Senate operations. It's a shame that
I was there that day, and I have seen a lot of tourists in the Capitol, and your point that these people were not tourists is absolutely taken. House Majority Leader Congressman Steny Hoyer of Maryland, thank you so much, sir, for being with us today. We really appreciate your time.